The rain was beating against the cracked window panes the night she left me, but I didn't hear it. All I could hear were her words, the final nails driven into the coffin of our marriage. "You're pathetic, Michael. A complete failure who will never amount to anything." That's what Claire spat before shoving the divorce papers into my hands and walking out without a glance back. My name is Michael Harris. I was 32 when my wife abandoned me for another man, a richer man, one who wore a $1,000 suit and carried himself like the world bent around his will. His name was David Richardson, the kind of figure you read about in glossy business magazines. Claire looked at him and saw security, luxury, the life she believed she deserved. She looked at me and saw failure dreams, ramen noodles, and a secondhand couch. What she didn't know that night, as she slammed the door on our tiny apartment, was that while she was betraying me, I was quietly building an empire beneath her nose. I had just closed the Harris Global Industries deal, $50 million worth of contracts that would change my life forever. But I didn't tell her. Maybe I should have. Maybe that revelation would have stopped her from throwing everything away. Or maybe it wouldn't have mattered. Maybe she had already chosen her path the moment she said David's taking me to Paris next week, with a sneer that cut through me like glass. I sat there with the papers, the biggest victory of my career, glowing on the laptop screen beside me, and I signed them anyway. Not because I agreed with her, not because I accepted her judgment, but because something in me broke that night. I needed to see how far she was willing to go. I needed to know who she truly was when the mask of love was gone. The days that followed were like watching my own funeral. Social media was her stage, and she paraded her upgrade with vicious pride, designer dresses, diamond jewelry, first-class flights. Every post screamed the same message: "Look at me now. Look what I left behind." And I did look. I studied every photo, not with longing, but with a cold clarity. Because while she flaunted borrowed luxury, I was laying the foundation for something that would outlast her glittering facade. Within a year, Harris Global wasn't just surviving, it was dominating. My name appeared on Forbes covers, my face framed by headlines calling me a visionary. David Richardson. The man who had stolen my wife suddenly found himself staring down a competitor who threatened to devour his empire. And Claire. She was right there beside him, arm in arm, thinking she had secured her ultimate victory. Then came the invitation. Heavy cream-colored paper, gold-embossed script, elegant to the point of arrogance. Claire and David Richardson cordially invited me to their wedding, but it was the handwritten note tucked inside that sealed her fate. "No hard feelings, Michael. Come see what a real wedding looks like. Maybe you'll learn something about success." I sat there with the card between my fingers, and for the first time in years I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because Claire had no idea who I had become. She thought she was inviting a ghost of the man she once knew. She thought I would come crawling back humiliated to watch her bask in her triumph. What she didn't know was that I already owned 30% of David's company through silent acquisitions. By the time she walked down the aisle, her groom's empire would be crumbling under the weight of my strategy. So I picked up my phone, called my head of security, and said the words that would set the stage for the most unforgettable day of her life. "Prepare the convoy for Saturday. Full detail. I have a wedding to attend." The morning of the wedding dawned bright and merciless. The city skyline shimmered in the heat, and the air buzzed with a kind of tension that felt almost personal. I woke early, though I hadn't truly slept. For hours, I'd lain in bed staring at the ceiling, letting memories seep into me. Claire laughing as she packed her bags. Claire's eyes sparkling at the mention of Paris. Claire's voice when she called me pathetic. Each memory burned, but instead of breaking me, they sharpened me. They were fuel, and today I would burn it all. The invitation had been for noon at St. James Cathedral, a towering monument of glass and stone that Claire had always adored. When we renew our vows, she had once whispered, "I want it here, somewhere everyone can see." Back then, I thought she was speaking about romance. Now I knew she had only ever meant spectacle. I chose my suit carefully that morning. Not one of the flashiest pieces my tailor had prepared, but a sharp midnight blue that whispered authority without screaming it. The tie was silk understated. On my wrist, a watch whose value could pay for her entire wedding gown. My reflection stared back at me in the mirror, and for the first time in years, I didn't see the man she had called worthless. I saw the man who had survived her betrayal and risen higher than she ever imagined. The convoy lined the street outside my penthouse, 4 black SUVs, each gleaming in the sun. Security men crisp in tailored suits. It was a display, yes, but not just for her. It was a reminder to myself of what I had built, of the power that now coursed through my veins, because I hadn't folded when she walked away. Neighbors peered through curtains as we pulled away, whispers no doubt racing through the building. When we arrived, the cathedral was already swarming with luxury cars, photographers, and guests in gowns that cost more than most people's yearly salaries. I stepped out, and for a moment the air itself seemed to pause. Heads turned. Cameras clicked. Murmurs rippled. Some recognized me instantly. Michael Harris, the self-made mogul who had appeared on every business channel in the last year. Others just stared, sensing the gravity of a man who didn't belong among them, but somehow commanded the space. Claire hadn't expected me to come. I could see it in the way her eyes widened when she caught sight of me from across the cathedral steps. She wore a gown of ivory lace fitted to perfection, her hair curled in waves that glistened in the sunlight. To the world she looked radiant. But to me, she looked like a stranger wrapped in borrowed light. "Michael," she said when I approached, her voice half gasp, half taunt, "you came." Of course, I replied, my tone, even my eyes steady on hers. I wouldn't miss it. For a heartbeat, I saw something flicker in her expression. Uncertainty, maybe even regret, but she masked it quickly, slipping her arm through David's, as though gripping her prize more tightly would make it real. David himself gave me a smirk that didn't reach his eyes, the kind of expression men wear when they know a storm is coming but refuse to acknowledge it. Inside, the cathedral glowed with sunlight streaming through stained glass, the air thick with roses and pride. Guests filled the pews, whispering as I walked down the aisle alone, each step deliberate, unhurried. I took a seat near the front, directly in their line of sight, and folded my hands in my lap. Let them see me. Let her feel my presence like a shadow she couldn't escape. The ceremony began, a choir filling the cavernous space with hymns that only sharpened the tension in my chest. Claire's vows dripped with sweetness, each word a dagger dressed in silk. She spoke of love, loyalty, forever, all the things she had once promised me before ripping them apart. David repeated the script with the confidence of a man who believed wealth was armor against betrayal. But as they slid the rings onto each other's fingers, I leaned back, allowing myself a small smile. Because while Claire clung to her illusion of triumph, I knew what the next hour would bring. In my pocket was the final document, signed and sealed, transferring the last controlling shares of Richardson Enterprises into my hands. By the time they cut their wedding cake, David's empire would belong to me. And Claire, well, she would find out what it meant to mistake betrayal for victory. The reception was staged like a coronation. Chandeliers glittered overhead. Waiters floated past with flutes of champagne that pricked the air like stars. A 12-piece band crooned through standards, while a video montage of their love story looped on screens carefully edited to erase the scaffolding of betrayal. Guests leaned into the theater of it, laughter pitched too high. Hugs held too long, each of them eager to catch a shard of reflected glamour. I walked the perimeter in silence, a tide against marble, and tasted the metallic calm that had settled in me since the ceremony. This wasn't about spectacle anymore. It wasn't even about money. It was about truth. And I was done letting my life be the only place it didn't exist. Claire found me first. "Enjoying yourself?" she asked. Mouth smiling, eyes measuring. Up close, I could see the detail in her gown, tiny seed pearls stitched like constellations. She always had a talent for choosing beautiful things. What she never understood was the cost of keeping them. "It's educational," I said. My gaze slid past her to David holding court near the bar. 2 venture capitalists pressed in on him like satellites, one of them checking a phone with the jittery urgency of a man waiting for news. I knew what news he was waiting for. Claire followed my eyes and misread them as she always had. Don't be bitter, Michael, she said softly. You could have had a place in this world if you'd only tried harder. I could have told her about 3 a.m. strategy calls about months sleeping under my desk, about the first contract that nearly broke me and the second that almost saved me. I could have told her about the factory manager who cried when we signed the supply guarantee that kept 400 people employed through a downturn. But her world had never made room for those kinds of stories. Instead, I said, "You're right. I should have tried harder." Then I excused myself and walked toward David. He turned with a politician's smile. "Michael Harris," he boomed, drawing attention we both knew he wanted. The man of the hour, well, one of them. Laughter skittered around our small circle. He leaned closer. "You didn't send a gift." I held his gaze. "I did. It should arrive now." His phone vibrated on the bar between us. The VC's phone vibrated too. And then, like a string pulled hard and fast, vibration rippled through the room. Pockets, purses, wrists. Heads bent, brows knit. The band played on, oblivious. David's smile faltered as he read. Then another message landed. And another. His face drained of color in increments like someone lowering a dimmer switch. "What did you do?" he said, voice too low for anyone but me to hear. "I bought what you told the world could never be bought," I said. "Board votes. Debenture tranches you thought were paper shields. The credit line you swore was unbreakable. It depended on covenants you broke the second you leveraged against your wedding." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. And this morning the trustee recognized change of control. He looked down at his phone again, hands shaking now. On the screens around us, the montage stuttered, froze, then blinked to black. In its place, a simple slide appeared. "Richardson Enterprises announces new executive leadership." The words were clean, restrained, almost gentle. Ruth had chosen the font herself. A murmur rose and fell like surf. The two VCs stepped back from David instinctively, as if something in him had become contagious. Across the room, Claire was still smiling at a cluster of guests, unaware the floor beneath her was tilting. When she turned to find us, I watched realization move through her like a shadow passing over a field, slow, then sudden. She was at David's side in seconds. "What's happening?" she demanded, the sweetness leached from her voice. He rounded on me. "You can't do this here. This is where you invited me to watch a story about success," I said. "I thought I'd show you another one." Security approached, uncertain whose orbit to obey. The band died mid-note. Phones flashed. In the corner, a reporter I recognized from the business pages slipped through a side door like a fox scenting blood. The ballroom, which had been curated to perfection, now felt like a box someone had kicked the air out of. Claire grabbed my arm, nails biting through wool. "You're cruel," she hissed. "This is my wedding." I could have said 1,000 things. I chose one. "You divorced me for being poor, and today you married a man because you believed he could never fall." I eased my arm free. "I'm not here to dance on your wreckage, Claire. I'm here to make sure you stop mistaking other people's hearts for scaffolds you can climb." Her breath hitched, and for a beat, I swear it, I saw the woman she used to be, the girl who believed in me, when belief was the only capital I had. Then it was gone, swallowed by pride or fear or both. A hush fell as the ballroom doors opened and a small entourage entered my team, led by Ruth and the interim CEO the board had ratified that morning. They crossed the room with the inevitability of tide. David tried to bluster, to demand, to threaten. Each word bounced off the paperwork Ruth handed him like rain against tempered glass. There would be no scene. There would be signatures, acknowledgments, resignations. There would be the precise choreography of corporate transfer executed ironically, to the beat of the waltz the band attempted to resurrect. I stepped away, then letting the machine do what machines do. At the edge of the room, an older woman stood apart from the crush. David's mother, I realized, fingers worrying the corner of her clutch, eyes glistening with a sadness that had nothing to do with money. Our gazes met, and in hers I saw a question I recognized. How did we get here? I bowed my head to her. I don't know if it meant I was sorry, or if it simply meant that I finally understood the collateral damage in every war. When I turned back, Claire had come to a stop in the center of the dance floor, alone in a pool of light that made her dress look like it was made of frost. People stared without pretending not to. She swallowed once, twice, then lifted her chin. "What now?" she asked me. Not a dare, not a plea, just a naked question. Now, I said quietly, we live with the people we've been. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then a glass shattered somewhere and the room exhaled all at once. My security detail shifted toward me, ready to ferry me out. But before I left, I reached into my jacket and pressed an envelope into Claire's hand. It was thin, plain. She looked at it like it might bite. It's a copy of the final settlement I never filed, I said. I didn't take the last thing I could have taken. I don't want your ring, or your name. I let my voice find its center. I just wanted you to see that building a life is harder than buying one. I walked out to the sound of nothing. The band silent again. The guests stunned past whispers. The chandeliers chiming faintly as the air conditioning kicked in. On the steps, the heat had broken. Clouds were rolling in, bruised and heavy, as if the day itself had decided spectacle wasn't the point after all. In the car, I watched the cathedral recede until it was just angles and light. My hands shook, a tremor of adrenaline giving way to something more complicated, relief grief, the cracked sweetness of closure that doesn't taste the way you think it will. I had won the game I never wanted to play. The question was whether winning would finally let me stop. That night, long after the reception had collapsed into chaos, I sat in my penthouse staring out at the skyline. The city glowed like a field of embers, each light a story burning quietly. My reflection stared back at me from the glass. Not the man she called pathetic, not the mogul on the magazine covers. Just me, stripped of the performance. Victory should have tasted sweet, but it lingered bitter like ashes caught in my throat. I thought about Claire, standing under that chandelier, her dress glittering like frost while the world fell apart around her. I had wanted to see her undone, to watch her facade crack. And I had. Yet the image haunted me, not with triumph, but with a sadness I couldn't shake. She had betrayed me, humiliated me, discarded me like I was nothing. But beneath the anger, I realized what I had wanted all along wasn't revenge. It was acknowledgement. Proof that I had mattered once, that she had seen me as more than a rung on her ladder. The envelope I had pressed into her hand burned in my mind. She would open it, eventually see the unfiled settlement, and know that I could have destroyed her completely but didn't. Would she see it as mercy or as arrogance? I didn't know. I only knew that walking away without that last strike felt more like victory than any hostile takeover. In the weeks that followed, Richardson Enterprises staggered under the weight of the transition. My name flooded the press, some calling me ruthless, others calling me brilliant. Strangers reached out to praise me, to condemn me, to beg me to tell the full story. But I stayed silent. Let them speculate. Let them build myths and monsters. The truth was messier than headlines could hold. I had loved a woman who chose wealth over me, and in losing her, I had built something bigger than either of us could have imagined. One evening, Ruth came to my office with a slim folder. "She's filed for separation," she said. "From David." The wedding lasted less than 3 weeks. I took the folder, but I didn't open it. I didn't need to see the paperwork. I could already picture Claire's face, pride stripped away, standing once more at the edge of a life she thought she had secured. "Do you want me to keep tracking her?" Ruth asked. I shook my head. "No. She doesn't belong to my story anymore." But the truth was, she always would. Not as the villain, not as the muse, but as the lesson etched into my skin. Love without respect is a slow death, and betrayal is only ever disguised as freedom. Months passed and life moved forward. Harris Global soared, expanding into markets I had once only dreamed about. My days filled with meetings, strategy flights across oceans. Yet some nights when the city quieted, I still found myself standing at the window, remembering the boy I had been when I first met Claire, the boy who believed love was enough. I grieved for him even as I honored him, because without his heartbreak, the man I had become would never have been born. On my 35th birthday, my team surprised me with a small party in the office. There was cake, laughter, toasts to the future. As I blew out the candles, I didn't wish for revenge or success or vindication. I wished for peace, for the strength to let the past be the past, and for the courage to keep choosing myself even when it hurt. So if you are listening to this, let my story be a warning and a reminder. Betrayal may cut you open. Humiliation may leave you bleeding in the dark, but you can survive it. More than that, you can rise from it. Not by clinging to vengeance, but by refusing to let someone else define your worth. If my story has touched you, I ask you from my heart, please, like this video, share it with someone who may need the strength. Subscribe for more stories of resilience and leave a comment with your thoughts. Because sometimes speaking our scars aloud is the first step toward healing.